And I would like to point out that because Rami's the balance to some positivity on this panel, and we've only got one of him and three of the others, but we have got a picture of Rami on the marketing material, so hopefully that kind of balances out.
So there's two of me now.
Yes, so there's two of
Nice.
you, exactly, times two, exactly. Right, first of all, I'm just going to ask the panel to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Rami. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about your experience with games, with monetization, and the favorite object in your room.
Nice. Yeah, my name is Rami Ismail. I'm an independent game developer. I'm best known for my work at independent game studio Vlaambeer. We made games about explosions. I did a game about collecting crates and explosions, a game about airplanes and explosions, a game about mutants and explosions, and a game about fishing with explosions. Don't ask about that last one. I'm also known for my work traveling around the world, working with independent developers in countries where the games industry isn't as readily available or developed. And beyond that, I make tools for independent developers around the world. My experience with monetization is I made premium games for all of my career. I've consulted on projects that aren't premium, but my development has always been premium. And my favorite object in my room is a little pot of a cat-shaped pot with a succulent in it that my partner gave me because I can't keep other plants alive.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Benjamin, the co-founder of Delwas Entertainment, a gaming studio headquartered in Paris, but with 100 people all over Europe, with now offices in Barcelona and soon in London. I come from the AAA industry. I was game director on Assassin's Creed before, especially on Assassin's Creed Black Flag, Assassin's Creed 4. And recently, so about a year and a half ago, we started moving to Web3. The game that we're developing is called Life Beyond. We started to pitch it back in 2017 as a gaming metaverse, so no one really knew what metaverse meant back then. I don't think we really did either, and I don't think we really do yet, but it was already an interesting experience. And then 18 months ago, basically, we decided to go really more through towards decentralization, and in the process got acquired by Animoca Brands, a company that you might have heard of that is also behind a bunch of other Web3 companies like The Sandbox. And very happy to be here today. I know we're going to debate.
And favorite thing in your room? Sorry? Favorite thing, object in your room?
Favorite object in the room?
In your room. Like
in my room. Oh, definitely my Kindle. It's something that has really changed my life. I can talk about it for hours.
Hello, I'm Maria Gillis. I'm a product manager at Hutch. I work on a mobile free-to-play title that is a CCG. I do some game design, some game economy design as part of my role. I work with the game director and data analysts looking at revenue, hard currency balances, and so on. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about that today. I also co-host the Medcast by Navic podcast with Nico here. And the favorite object in my room is a plushy green dragon because I was visiting some friends who have a 2-year-old and I kept playing with their plushies. So they gave me one to hug at night.
Hey everyone, my name is Nico Vreke. I'm not native to the games industry, although I've been a bit too serious according to my parents, gamer my whole life. I come from the crypto side, so I've been building crypto startups for the last 5 years and now find myself as part of Bitcraft VC. So Bitcraft is a games VC and we invest in all traditional games, but we also now have a token fund with which we invest in Web3 games. So that's what I do most of the time. And then next to that, I co-host the Metacast by Navic with Maria here. I focus on the crypto side, so we have a segment called the Crypto Corner, and there I try to have open-minded discussions like we hopefully will have here today. And then recently I also launched a DAO. The DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. We don't have to go into that today, but it's focused on the future of gaming, where we are experimenting with what new technologies could do for games and for organizing people on the internet. And then favorite object in my room, it's very boring, it's very utilitarian. It's a white noise machine. I'm a very light sleeper, and so I have this thing next to me that's like the whole night. It's amazing. Highly recommended. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to start with questions. So what are the positive benefits of this new technology for the games industry? And Nico, if we could start with you, and any issues that you see as well.
It's a very open question.
It is.
It's a tough one. So, okay, we have 45 minutes, right? Okay. I think, can I take a step back and talk about like how I see blockchain technology, like visually? So for me, what blockchain technology is, and the way I try to explain, or Web3 more broadly to people is, traditionally in games and other centralized applications, you have data that's stored inside a centralized database within the ecosystem of the company itself. And so for me, what Web3 does is it takes this database and it just makes it public. So, everyone in this room, there's this giant wall and everyone can have its little post box. And so, you can have things in your post box that you can prove, hey, that's mine. And because it's public, I can send something to her. Everyone agrees that I send it to her. So now she has it, I don't. And so there's this sense of ownership that's now built into the internet stack, something we didn't have before. And so, the way I look at what it can do to games is as a consequence of this, this database, instead of being centralized and closed, and you have to, if you want to have information, the company has to open it through APIs. Now it's just out there, everyone can see it. And so, the first one is that what I'll do is I'll just pick one and we can keep it going, because otherwise, yeah, I'm here talking all the whole time, right? So the first one for me is this concept, and I know it's a heavy loaded word. It's called interoperability, right? And I think it can have many meanings. I'll explain like one way I see it, which is like an easy or something that's easy to get, which is if I have a game, or if I'm the player of a game. So let's give an example. So I used to play a whole lot of RuneScape. Jackie's game, it's incredible, very deep economy. And one of the most valued assets within that game were party hats. So you had like these party hats, you could wear them, you had different colors. They were valued immensely. In real terms, they were worth thousands or $10,000s of dollars, even 15 years ago. And so I had friends who told me like, oh, I own a party hat, but I never saw it. So, they were telling me they owned a party hat, but I never had proof. And so, in today's world, if we have a blockchain where the economy actually lives on the blockchain, on this open database, I could make a Discord and say, the only person or only people that are allowed here are people that actually own a party hat. Very simple. That's one example. Another example would be a gaming social network where, I can have as my avatar, my World of Warcraft character with all of the top gear that I prefer. So these are some simple examples of interoperability. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm taking one weapon from one game and taking it to the next. It is, the assets live on an open database that everyone can access with permission, or permissionlessly, but we can go into zero knowledge technology as well, where you can hide actually what you own. And so others can interact with it, can build on it, and do some exciting stuff with it.
You want to have a response? I kind of don't want you to have to do too much work,
Right.
but I suspect that we'll have a positive, and then you could perhaps.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like the description of the technology sounds about right. To me, that sounds like just any RESTful type of API. And I understand that the big difference is that this is decentralized, but I personally haven't found the benefit in that. Like it's still going to be dependent on people having access to that blockchain, on permission models. And I find that anything interoperability runs into the same issue that this games industry has always, which is that we just don't standardize shit. Like, it's not like we can't do this right now. Like, games can interact. We can send items from one game to the other game. We can make things publicly available. We can open up those databases, but we do not. It's not a technological border that has stopped us from doing it. It's just that it's not particularly good for us to do that in general.
And why is that?
Because if you do that, and this is one of the dangers I see with this technology, it will always feed up to the big fish, right? So if Fortnite makes a model where you can use Fortnite and you can connect to it, and everybody has access to the blockchain, and Fortnite is the bigger player on that, then everybody will only benefit from it if it benefits Fortnite, which means that you have to make your game work with the items in Fortnite, which means you have to do extra work. Then people spend money on Fortnite to get the item, and then you benefit from exposure. And that's sort of like the core model will always feed up to the bigger players. And that's obviously why it's so interesting right now to investment and to investors. It's just the whole idea of everything blockchain related still relies on a weird centralization. Like there's a paradox inherent to me, at least, or that I'm seeing right now, where to get decentralization to work, we have to have unparalleled centralization in the industry to make that happen. And you can say like, well, it doesn't have to work for everybody, or it's partial, or like, we can do that now. I could do that 10 years ago. Hell, Pokemon did it with a Game Boy and a link cable. And if I trade you my Pokemon from 1998, it will still say Rami as the person who caught it in 1998. Like we solved this. So there's cool technology in it. Like I really genuinely think blockchain is a really interesting technology when it's already trusted, when it's internal in a company and every element of it is trusted. It's an amazing technology to keep track of how things work and evolve. But as soon as you make it open, you kind of run into every ugly reality of Earth. Like things feed up. Decentralization means centralization towards those with power, who have the most influence, who can buy the biggest stake, or who can. So I don't know. I see the benefits if you want to make money. And I don't really see the benefits for games, but that's me, right? I'll kick the microphone to other people who probably have opposite thoughts.
Go for it, Maria.
I think coming from free to play, the monetization is to add spend depth, and there's always pay to win to a certain degree. And so we've excelled at finding ways to design a game where we can balance the economy in a way where, yes, you can buy progression, you can buy power, but it's still balanced. And I think that's what's still yet to be explored within blockchain games. And I think this will resolve some of the things that we're discussing that could be problems. And for me, what's more exciting about this technology, I honestly, the keywords, like the buzzwords of interoperability and true ownership and permissionless, they don't mean anything to me. And so I think we'll start seeing a bit more adoption in the market when we stop talking about the technology and we just start designing things that we just can't design now with the technology that we have. Like blockchain, okay, just forget what blockchain exists for and just think, okay, scratch the limitations and the constraints that we have right now. If we don't use blockchain, let's think about an innovation of what kind of new designs we can create. And then like we have technology that can allow that. And I think some of the problems, at least my understanding of blockchain, that is it was born within finance, like in a fintech world. And so I think the builders who were already into crypto and are crypto natives, they're now developing games that are very focused on like a financial aspect. And I think we're going to see that decrease. And as we see more game developers using the technology just to build games and not to build financial products.
I can't disagree with that, of course. This is and it really reminds me of the movie that I already watched with Free to Play back then, when I was working at Ubisoft and trying to evangelize that, and developers were welcoming me with tomatoes. The point was, indeed, why are we doing this? How is it improving the experience? And you're right, it took League of Legends, it took Clash of Clans, so that at a point we didn't care so much about the business model, we cared about the quality of the experience. I would just like to go back on the point that Rami brought, which is that right now you see it more about making money and not about improving the game experience. I think the situation is games are already making money. Developers, publishers are already making money. So to me, this really doesn't change much. But what it changes is that it's kind of a construct that really supports network effect. And I hope we're going to talk about this. Because network effect is, especially for me as developing an MMO, is what matters to me the most. When you play an online game, as a player, you contribute to this network effect. No one wants to enter an empty lobby. No one wants to enter a game where you can't matchmake because no one else is playing the game. Now, while you contribute to this network effect, the nature of the traditional business model doesn't get you the opportunity to extract, recoup any part of the value you contribute. And so while it doesn't have to be your first motive, just the opportunity to have to have a part of this value creation eventually, to me, is really dramatically changing the game here. And it's not so, in a way, it's not so much about blockchain specifically, but more about NFT and tokens. So of course you can tell me to run on the blockchain, but it's more the assets themselves that changes this dynamic rather than the blockchain specifically as a technology.
Can I ask why that wouldn't have been possible without blockchain? Like what is like the unique thing, or what does NFT do that allows you to do that couldn't be done? Because if I made an MMO and I wanted people to be able to sell assets to other players, I could do that, like without a blockchain. So what is because like I see the opportunity, right? From a business point of view, there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of investment, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of press about NFT. There's amazing support from the fintech world. So I see the business opportunity. But the design opportunity to me feels not dissimilar from what we had 5 years, 10 years ago, right?
Well, let's see your answer.
So just to answer your question, I agree with you.
But I mean, can you answer a bit more than that? Why is blockchain?
So, I mean, the NFT means non-fungible token, right? Like a token is a very familiar concept for any, well, backend developer, online services developer, right? A token has existed for many years. The question through blockchain is decentralization, and there are benefits, but to other benefits than the ones that I was specifically mentioning. So to answer your question specifically, you don't need blockchain. For this specifically, you don't need blockchain. There might be issues of trust. We've experienced this with our community, where when we told them, because we were actually doing it this way, we had, in a centralized way, we were offering the opportunity to trade your digital assets, your in-game assets. We weren't calling them NFTs, but in a way, that's what they were. We're offering players to trade them for real money on the marketplace. But we started to get challenged by people asking for this data to be public. And so the public ledger was the benefit of the blockchain here. So of course, when you start digging into this conversation, you see the benefit of having a wider economy that goes beyond your own ecosystem, connecting with others. Exactly a little bit like when you're on Steam, you're part of an ecosystem. You benefit from that system, and not just to be isolated, by yourself. But if I just go back to the core of your question, I agree. Like the dynamic that I'm kind of trying to put under the spotlight could totally run on an enclosed space.
Yeah, I think when talking about what this new technology stack can do for games, it's, I think, logical to look at the games we have today and to say, well, we have these games. What does this new technology do for these games that we already have? And I think actually that's not the right way of thinking about it. My job as a venture capitalist is to, try and imagine what new games can be built that could not exist without this technology. And that's really hard, right? I don't know. I'm talking to teams, and if teams can convince me, like, we have a great idea, and there are some teams in here that are doing some really exciting things. But I think we can all agree that the games that exist today, by definitions, I can make a case probably that none of the games that have existed until Web3 will benefit from adding this technology on top. And so maybe you guys don't agree, but I think that a case could be made for that. I think there are new experiences that we can't imagine or have difficulty imagining today that can exist with this new technology stack.
I honestly think that's why I think Web3 games and blockchain games will rely a lot on young people entering the game industry, because I don't know about you, but I've just been working in the industry now for a few years, and my mind is already within these constraints of what I can and can't design. And I think we're going to see a lot of people who don't have this box of what you can do enter and be able to think about just game design that we can't think of now. And in terms of why, if we need blockchain, I think I just don't really understand why it's so important, whether we're using blockchain or not, and why that's a problem. You know, if I'm using an account service, I don't care if it's OAuth or not. I care that my details are secure and no one can hack my account. If I'm making a purchase on a web shop, I care that it's confirming with my bank before taking the money out of my account. I don't care whether it's like AWS servers or something. Yeah, so I think my opinion is you start from the goal and what problem is solving for the player and what kind of experience you can create, and then you just see what technology allows you to do so.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah. No, sorry, I have to always be the opposite.
We need this.
Yeah, no, with all respect, you're a venture capitalist. Your goal is to find interesting new things that make money, right? Like, that's the point after the comma. And I think that there's no malice in that. You're trying to find interesting things because they will make money because they're interesting, right? I think that's sort of, again, like at the crux of the whole thing is this technology benefits people with money, especially the way we're building it now. And I would actually agree that there is likely we're stuck in ways of designing games that are not dependent on blockchain. Like I do not challenge that at all. And that's the same discussion I had in 2013 about free-to-play, that there would be games that never existed before. And I would argue that there's been some really cool free-to-play stuff. I'm also watching Diablo Immortal, like, wrecking kids' lives still, and we still haven't regulated it. So I'm a little done with, like, move fast and break shit. Like, I think it might be time to go, like, okay, are we going to fuck people's lives with this? Because, yeah, people got rich doing free-to-play by making other people get poor. That's kind of how economy works, right? So for me, sort of the central conceit of, okay, let's just see what happens. It's really hard for me right now. And then the idea that that the young developers are the ones that would come up with cool blockchain stuff. I talk to a lot of young developers, and I've not heard a single one go, you know, got a brilliant blockchain idea. Like, the people that are making these games all, you know, have some experience in the industry, see a business opportunity, see an opportunity to take an idea that they love, because the idea of the network effect, the idea of, those are advanced game design concepts. They're not like, I come into the industry and I'm like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. It's difficult technology. It's you need quite a senior team. You need the ability to integrate with an existing structure. It's not the most simple thing to do, let alone build the structure, the community support, the legal structures, the financial structures to deal and interact with the blockchain or with global commerce, which you're immediately jumping into. The indies I come across are like, I'm going to make a platformer about love, and then it's a shooter where you shoot hearts. You know, like that's sort of where the indies start, where young developers are starting. So again, like I don't disagree that there might be incredible games that are only blockchain possible, but as of yet, I'd like to think I see a lot of weird shit talking to indies, and I've just not seen anybody go like, here's the one game that could only be done on blockchain, and the goal of it is not that money is transferred somewhere.
At this point, I'd like to ask the question. Well, I'd like to ask the question: what is the benefit for players? Where will players get? Yeah.
Or even, I think, for the indie world in particular, the problem, and I'm going to focus on free-to-play. So maybe you will challenge me on the more traditional premium business model. But in the free-to-play world, the problem, the structural issue of free-to-play is cost per acquisition. Okay, you can have a great game idea. If you don't get the dollars to scale your operation, and specifically to spend thousands or hundreds or millions of dollars in acquisition, you basically cannot sustain, and so your great game idea can just not exist. All of this because the structural nature of, you know, the acquisition, retention, monetization funnel makes it that a small proportion of the players end up spending a lot of money so that everybody else can play. And in a way, it's not so different than the criticism that is developed towards blockchain gaming with people spending a lot of money. But at the end of the day, it's always a small portion of players spending so that everybody can play. So cost per acquisition creates this big problem, which in the end makes it that we have a very small amount of games that we end up being able to play because there are only these games that end up surviving. The one really huge benefit that I see of this new type of business model is that, let's think about it. 70% is for the bigger, for some games, for the successful games, it's like 70, 80% of the money generated that goes back into marketing. So it goes back into the ad platform. None of this money is reinvested in further players directly. So we really end up really requiring all of these things that I was mentioning. Now, with blockchain gaming, you see very successful projects being, operating with a very limited audience, with a few thousands of players who are indeed spending this money. But so you can start seeing, I think, a greater spectrum of games in the future. Of course, right now we're still at the very beginning of this thing. But I think I'm hoping that thanks to this and thanks to a model where basically instead of investing in marketing, your players are kind of your agents promoting for you because they have a form of skin in the game, whether they spent money or not. By the way, you can play. There are kind of free-to-play Web3 game where you can play, and what you grind, what you collect, what you earn are actually NFTs, and so can earn value eventually. So you have a reason, you have an incentive to promote. And I like to think that in the future this will really enable new smaller developers to be able to push their game to a smaller community. And I always get back to EVE Online, which is I think for us developers that we would consider as a successful endeavor, but it never had millions of players, but a small community, or reasonably small. It was probably 100,000 MAU, so it's not ridiculous, but very committed, kind of all monetizing. And this made it a very healthy business for 15, 20 years.
Nico, you talk to a lot of developers. What do you think? Have you seen things where you think their design, their game is genuinely going to benefit the players?
Yes, a bunch. But it's hard to say how exactly. It's the question I was going to ask, Rami, because you asked, is there one game that you could point me towards that is one uses blockchain in a genuinely new way,
right,
and two is not based purely on financial dynamics where it's made to make money. And so for me, the best example for that is a game called Dark Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with that?
Very.
So it's a fully on-chain game. So the whole game state is recorded on the blockchain, which has a bunch of really interesting and it is intellectually interesting implications, not necessarily gameplay interesting implications, if that makes sense, right? So the game lives on chain, which means that as long as the blockchain is alive, as long as there's one person that has a computer that is actually acting as a node, this game will be playable. That's one. And the second thing is also that this game lives on the programmable database, because it's not only a database, it's also programmable. You can do some interesting stuff with that. And so, I can take the game and just, tweak it a little bit and add something that I think would benefit the game. And then, others can just say, okay, I'm going to use that part as well and run that. And so, again, these are, for the moment, still more intellectually interesting than they are. Oh, so many players play it because it's so much better. But for me, give it a few more years. There are a bunch of people doing very interesting experiments, and it's, again, this interesting word. But there's going to be experiences that will be genuinely, fun for players, I believe.
Yes, just some things that come off the top of my head in terms of player benefits. Having games with open trading economy, and you have technology that you can plug in to develop that. I think there's also like this satellite benefit of encouraging people to explore something new. You know, the world is in a difficult place and crypto is playing more of an important role in society. And so giving people a reason to engage with new technology and become familiar, I think it's a good benefit by having games pull people in. Oh gosh, I had another positive, but now it's slipped my mind with these bright lights. So you go ahead, Ben.
In a way, you also bring through your points a benefit for developers, which is that you don't have to build a marketplace. You know, you can actually, because it runs in a permissionless way. You know, as developer, you have no control over these assets. Of course, you can tell your game that they don't run anymore, but the asset still lives on the chain. It lives on the public ledger. So anybody can build this marketplace, and this is exactly what's happening right now. OpenSea, Rarible, Magic Eden, etc. So those are not built by us; they're built by third parties. And it also means, and this is the third feature that we often talk about when we talk about NFTs, it's composability. So the idea that you can program a smart contract that's going to use the existing NFTs. And so that really enables third-party, service providers, developers to add an extra layer of services on your experience. So you have your idea now?
Yeah, you reminded me what it is. More opportunities for UGC. Like if the game logic is on chain, someone can pick that up and develop their own games. We have a young female engineer now at Hutch, and the way that she got into games was doing modding on her favorite game. And so I think just making it more available to anyone at home who's curious about developing games, being able to pick a game that they like and be able to develop their own experiences, I think that's great for the industry and for players in general. And we also see, for example, Sky Mavis, they have this Axie Infinity IP where people can use the IP and use the NFTs to gain access to it. So you also have builders trying to support that creativity. Yeah.
So, do you want to respond to any of this? Because I've got another question, but I'll let you.
Are we still on the first question?
We're at like
Oh, nice.
8.
You know what? I'll leave this one.
Okay.
Let's just
So
go to the next question.
I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'll see if there's any questions from the floor. Yeah, because we are, 35 minutes in. So my last question is: recently, crypto's taken a bit of a bath. Unfortunately, I have Southern kids. I'm from Sheffield, so I say bath, they say bath. But anyway, it's correct terminology is bath. But it's, I think what Ethereum is maybe 40% of what it was 6 weeks ago, and it's another sort of the 3-year cycle, and it's volatile and so on. So in quite practical terms, if how does that affect all this positivity or negativity in terms of game developers and takeaways for us from this room? So I'll start with you, Nico.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things of crypto technology is that it suddenly allowed the general public to start investing in technology. And that is something that wasn't possible before. And because it's so easy, and it's not super easy, obviously, like you have to go to an exchange and wire money and all that stuff. But there's a ton of speculation in this space. And I think, anyone who's actually building games in this space realizes that, currently a good chunk, and I would say 90% might be fair, of the players in this space are either there to, speculate on assets that will go up in value. These could be NFTs or fungible tokens, or they're here because they were told that they could earn a living by playing games. And so this downturn for me is, is a consequence of over speculation and too much euphoria about the potential of these new technologies. I think almost exactly a year ago there were a lot of people who thought that we were already living in the metaverse, and people could the 50% of a player base could make a living wage by playing a game. And I think now we realize that that might not be the case, or at least not for now. And so this is just everyone realizing that, okay, we might have been a bit too much euphoric, and a lot of people who are mainly there for speculation getting watched out and losing hope. And I actually think generally think that's a good thing. If that 90% of speculators goes down to 30% when we have a long bear market, I think that's a really good thing. And yeah, so me as an investor, I'm excited for the next few years. Me as a passionate gamer, I'm excited for the next few years of bear market building. It's what we've always had. I've been through a few cycles. It looks depressing from outside, but inside it's like a cozy, people just sitting together and like, oh, we'll build some new cool stuff. Yeah.
So I don't know if I find it cozy every day, but but where I completely agree with what you're saying is that it's an opportunity. So it's true that it had turned a little bit into a big mess with like a lot of opportunistic projects, a lot of scams, Ponzinomics, everything. And that is also the reason why I think when you meet someone in the Web3 space who tells you that everything is amazing, you can run away. And you can, I think when you're in this space, you have to be balanced. You cannot just say that it's amazing and everything is perfect. We're at the very beginning of it. We have to remain very humble and very realistic of where it is. Now, it's an opportunity, but it's also it's an opportunity to thrive if you do things, I think, the right way, which are basically a few things, focusing on utility and quality. So instead of just flooding the market and spamming with everything and every NFT that comes to your mind, it's about making sure that everything that you push has a very strong utility, very readable, very appealing, and that really makes sense from a user standpoint. And that the quality of what you're pushing beyond the utility, which is really like the specs in a way, but also the way you're pushing it has to be just far beyond what we've seen before. So it's a challenge because, of course, it's much more complicated now to successfully operate, but it's also an opportunity because then you know how it is in this situation. All the opportunists who are basically not willing to give the sweat and the time to build something sustainable just move away right now. So I agree with you, but I wish it was a bit cozier.
Maria?
Apologies for everyone that's building in the blockchain space. I think it was one of the best things that could have happened to help us move forward, the Ponzinomics and the get-rich-fast schemes, because you can't do that anymore. And so you have to get good. And like a core principle of business is that a competitive market in the end is healthy for consumers because companies have to work for it. They have to optimize. They have to try to improve their products. And I think that's what we're going to see now. Like companies have to develop good games. They have to develop healthy economies and reasons for players to go and play. And I know that is like a pro and con of the pre-sale of NFTs and tokens allows new companies to fund and get off the ground. And now that's going to be harder, but at the end of the day, that provides some consumer protection because, there's a portion that's doing that in a safe manner and they're going to follow through on it. But then we also see a lot of scams. And so having a little pause on that, I think will also be good for players in the end.
God. So people lost hundreds of millions across the world and, cozy opportunity and benefit. I understand how business works and I understand that it's hard, but this is why I don't move fast, break things, because people lost millions, good people who were just trying to invest in a thing they saw online, who didn't have the qualifications, who got the access to this decentralized, unregulated technology, spent all their money and got fucked, right? And I understand that's how it works, and I understand that's their own risk and it's their own responsibility, but I'm also looking at the world and I'm just wondering, I don't know how to express this, but I don't think this is the way technology should work, that on the way there, so many people get hurt. And I don't know if I trust an industry that after 10 years still hasn't regulated free-to-play to the point where Diablo Immortal can exist today, where it has to be banned in 2 European countries, but not the others, where free-to-play is still causing the same issues it was 10 years ago with kids spending their parents' wallets in a game that still doesn't have parental controls. Like, I don't know that I trust this industry to do it right. Because the way I've seen this industry is the people with the most money decide how it works. Not the people who want the best, the people with the most money. And the people who make the most money are not usually the ones that do the nicest business. It's just not how business works, because the more ruthless you are in general, the better you do. There's no difference with Uber or Coca-Cola or whatever, any of those companies. So I believe that there is a future in which blockchain could be a positive technology. I believe that there are games that could never be built without blockchain. I believe that there are probably benefits to the technology that I could not or will not consider that a young developer will. I'm terrified of getting there without regulation, without stops, without control, without having somebody or a government or an entity or anything that says like, listen, this will fuck you over if you fuck it up, right? So for me, that's like all of the excitement about it is just completely dampened by the idea that people get hurt. And for me, that's sort of where the period is. And I understand for a lot of people, and in business, it has to be a comma, right? People got hurt. Let's build it better now. Let's do it better now. Let's figure it out. But looking at free-to-play, I don't trust this industry to do it right. And I hope I'm wrong. I genuinely do.
I'm going to introduce my cynical self for a little bit here. But isn't that how it works across industries? That's just humanity.
Yep.
We, look at look at genomics. Anyone can buy CRISPR and go into their shed and do an experiment that's not regulated. Look at AI. AI, machine learning, is built through training data that's already biased, and then we build biased products that are unfair and can even be racist, as we've seen in the industry. And so I think, again, like, we're going to rely in blockchain gaming on founders that are ethical and moral and follow through those responsibilities. But just like in anything, even in regulated technologies, there will be bad operators.
So I would say we are technically at time, and I would like at least one question from the audience.
Oh, don't let it end on my cynicism.
Or we could just leave it.
I can be
We'll
more.
just
I
go
can be
home
more
and, like,
cynical if that helps.
Are you?
No,
You guys don't have. I think on this, there's not even a debate.
No.
I think everybody agrees.
So
And,
can we get? Has anyone got a question? Okay, we've got a question here. He was first.
Okay, here.
Oh, okay. Right.
Who was it?
He's already got 2 jobs. Now he's got to go and do the mic thing.
So one of the benefits people often bring forward for blockchain games or NFT games is real world trading. But my question is, doesn't that kind of take away from the game? No one starts on equal footing anymore. Inequality in the actual world can come through. And the second part of that is, how do developers then progress the game? If you want to introduce a new item, that can devalue people's existing items. And that kind of slows progress or means your progress will greatly upset people.
So I guess you can answer that question, and I can as well, right? This is you're pointing the typical problem that we have already in free-to-play game. It's called power creeping. We do that all the time because we need to extract more and more and more value from these people paying. We keep adding stuff like that. So there is one benefit of NFTs right now, which is you deal with scarcity, and that avoids that. That is one, I'd say, medicine to avoid that. You're still bringing a point that we can still end up facing this type of situation, but with scarcity, you deal better with the fact that the supply was limited of the item that was pushed before, and so you don't need to power creep this time. If you can push something else, something new. It doesn't have to be better. It can be different. The fact is just that the supply of the previous one is over. It's limited. It can be trading on the secondary market. But as the operator, as the publisher, you don't have to. You can keep adding more content without harming the previous one.
Can I also
Yeah,
answer?
I think we will have to wrap after that. So.
Okay. So I think I have a slightly different take from Ben. I actually agree that that's a problem, and that's something that I think hasn't been solved yet. One idea that I had was that we've been taking the concept of NFT and the design of NFT for granted, where NFT is something that you can sell on OpenSea and you can do whichever thing that you wanted. But because NFTs are programmable, you can actually, for example, say, okay, I'm going to avoid speculation on my game, or I'm going to make it sure that there's not too much pay to win by limiting the selling price or buying price for items. You can actually hard code or code, a sale price for an NFT into the contract itself, so it cannot be sold for more or less. And so my point again is that this technology has a lot of dangerous potential, as we've seen, right? A lot of people are speculating on it and losing money on it, and there's a shit ton of scams. But it's still technology, and it just is more flexible than anything we've ever seen in terms of how to program value. And so I feel like good game designers, because this is a balancing issue, and so you can balance within the game, and I think you'd also be able to balance outside the game, so on the blockchain itself, if that makes sense.
Quick final answer, Rami.
I think you're not wrong in identifying those two issues. It sounds like both of you agree that you're not wrong in those issues. Scarcity is something we could do, and it seems like blockchain has sort of like a natural implication towards scarcity. So I think, and in that regard, it fits. But you don't get away from the fact that if you implement a more powerful item, that the value of the previous item gets low. So there's also just a whole bunch of fiscal and legal and other issues that haven't been resolved yet, because they've not been to court and they've not been resolved. So in that regard, I have to, entrepreneurship is risk, and I have to applaud y'all for taking a lot of risk in that regard. Because a lot of this is just question marks. These are not established answers. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what happens if you accidentally wreck somebody's asset that they bought with real money, and now it's worth nothing because there's a green version of the sort. Ongoing, I think, that one.
It's already
Okay.
happening with free-to-play with India.
Oh, yeah.
So-
Sorry.
So sorry. What I'm saying is that it's already happening in free-to-play games, right? So here we're not. I don't think you're making the situation any worse. The question is the question is indeed, how do you avoid just this type of mechanic that are basically only brought, right, to extract more value from your existing user base?
I think we're going to have to stop there because there's another talk in 9 minutes.
Oh, can I
You
just
can-
say
you can have
something?
3 words.
Three words.
Oh, that's 2 of them. That's 2 of them. Oh, you've got
Can I
1
ask-
left.
Can we all get
Okay.
three? Can we all get 3
All
words
right, you
and
can
then
have
done?
3 words. Maria, go.
True, ownership, untrue.
Oh,
What? Okay, can we make it
all right.
slightly more than 3 more words?
All right, 5 words.
Can we get a full sentence?
I think this is why using buzzwords like true ownership is we potentially are misselling to the player what they're buying, because as game economy balances have to happen in a live game, we will have to rebalance things that the players have bought, and so they're not immutable. They could change their stats, and so true ownership,
I'm sure
untrue.
that's more than 3 words, or even 5. Right, Rami.
Just to wrap up my point of view on this, I agree that this is how all business works. I think all business is kind of shit at the moment and the world is burning. So I don't really think that's a good argument for doing things. But it is what it is. And this is the only part of the world that I can affect. So let's hope we can do better.
Nico, quick sentence.
If you're building a game, send me an email.
Good plug. Good plug. I
investing.
like that one. That was good. Good.
Hey, keep
And,
selling.
Ben, you can go last one. 3 words, 5 words.
No, what I want to say is just that we're at the very beginning. Nothing is set in stone, and this is this kind of conversation that makes things go, progress the right way, rather than what I experienced back then, in free-to-play with just people being just viscerally opposing, one side against the other. I think there is an opportunity to build these things together, and as you can see, we're not so much in this, fighting here. We just want to find the right way to address all these issues and leverage all the opportunities.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, I'd like to thank our panelists and everybody in the room.